Good afternoon, everybody. Now, I think when you have a lecture on Zoom, there are a lot of disadvantages because we don't see each other and interaction is very poor. Anyway, that we have to live with it because, physical meetings are costly, I think, for individuals as well as for the organization. So let us start my lecture today. That is International Affairs and Sustainable Development. I have now shared the screen with you. Hope you can see the slides. I want you to
Yes,
talk.
sir. Yeah, we can see.
Right. Now, let us discuss what is now. Now, I think I have prepared this presentation to suit engineers, and I'm going to touch upon subject matters which are more relevant to engineers in the global arena. So most of the time that I think we are saddled with sustainable development in the international scene. A lot of challenges are now there about sustainable development. Therefore, I cover this topic. So let us see how the global outlook has changed from 20th century to 21st century. Now, this is how you can summarize. As we all know, in 20th century, we had 2 world wars and also Nazism. I think most of you would have the knowledge on these issues. Then communism and revolutions. Then NATO was established by the United Nations to maintain world peace and it was also dominated by the West. Then establishment of the United Nations in 1945 after the World War II. Then there was a time that we had the world affairs were all focused on Cold War for supremacy, that East and West issues. Then there was in the mid-80s another challenge the global community faced was AIDS. Then they also realized the damage caused by so-called industrialization and development to the environment. And also they established and agreed by the community, world community, to achieve Millennium Development Goals. So in the 21st century, we are compounded with more and more challenges. On top of the carryover, the challenges from the 20th century, then the climate, global warming, greenhouse gas emission, CO2 content in the atmosphere. Then the countries agreed to have a COP, countries of partners. That is to discuss about the climate issues and agree on a program to mitigate climate impacts. And also the international community agreed to achieve sustainable development goals. They set up 17 goals with 269 targets. And to cover all sectors of development and development so that the development is not going to damage the environment, rather complement the environment. Then global warming is another huge challenge. CO2 emission and atmospheric pollution, the economy, In COVID-19, we all face the issue. And human rights, we all know that human rights is a very contentious issue these days, because there are two wars have erupted: Ukraine-Russia war and the Middle East war. And also there is a USA is also challenged by developing countries like China and India. So those are the global affairs are governed by these underlying issues. Now I just mentioned here international stroke global stroke world affairs. How do we use global and world? The two words are interchangeable, but there are certain aspects to these two words. Now, when you say world, world means it is more of political nature. Global means everything on earth, including atmosphere, oceans, everything is global. But when you say world, it is mainly focused on population and the politics, the political the territories of the countries. So sometimes they define global as when you mention global, it is the all the countries. When you say world, except your country, the other countries. But let us focus on the actually international affairs provides an interdisciplinary understanding of foreign cultures and societies, the dynamics of world politics, and how other nations perceive the world and why they act the way they do. That is the basic fundamental message in world affairs, international affairs. Then international relations. All depends on the foreign policy, diplomacy, war, peace, trade, aid, bilateral and multilateral agreements, east-west, environment, air, water and land, climate, food security, world health, population, pollution, health of the planet, sustainable development, conventions, human rights and democracies. Now, conventions means there are a number of conventions to address the challenges and agree with community, international community, to meet sustainable development goals. Say, let us look at those agreements. There are a large number of global summits for international community to meet and address global affairs. I think now in your as professionals, to be smart in the application of your professional skills, you need to know a lot of things which are outside your subjects to be to serve the society as a smart engineer. Now we know that very well. Now we lack a lot of things that we enjoyed during our time, but now it's time that you take over the engineer's role in the society and work as smart engineers. So the one of the most important agreement summit that took place in Paris in 2005, and they agreed on a declaration. They laid down some important points. So where our 100 developed and developing countries agree to change the way they do business. Now the issue is that why are we confronted with global warming and climate change? Because the human civilization was not sustainable. Now, in the past 200 years or so, we have been exploiting the resources of the earth, and we are confronted with waste. And that is why we are now having these issues in front of us. So that is why they agreed to change the way they do business. We have been doing business in the unsustainable way. So the Paris Agreement reaffirms that developed countries should take the lead in providing financial assistance to countries that are less endowed and more vulnerable, while for the first time also encouraging voluntary contributions by other parties. This is how we get grants from developed nations. Now, if the poverty is high in the world, there is poverty that cause a lot of damage to the resources and environment and climate. So therefore, equity is one of the most important issues that we need to address, because equitability, the wealth has to be shared among poor nations so that they will improve their quality of life and remove those unhealthy habits and unhealthy issues that affect the planet. Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development is another important organization in the world. There are 38 countries, very rich countries are there. They contribute to the World Bank, Asian Development Bank, African Development Bank. All those multilateral development banks are bilateral development banks, Islamic Bank. All those are funded by these OECD countries. So that is how they channel the aid to developing countries to develop their economies. There is another annual meeting called Spring Meeting of the Boards of Governors of the World Bank Group. World Bank is also part of the UN group. And the International Monetary Fund bring together central banks, bankers of countries, ministers of finance, and finance and development, parliamentarians, private sector executives, representatives from civil society organizations and academics to discuss issues of global concern, including the World Economic Outlook, poverty eradication, economic development, and effectiveness. Now, this is one of the most important meetings taking place in Washington. Every year in most of the time it is in April, and all finance ministers are attending, most of the, I think, member countries. And they discuss these issues which are concerned, and also economic outlook, poverty eradication, economic development, and aid effectiveness. So now, next it is also featured as seminars, regional briefing, press conference. This is a very big event which is taking place in about 3 to 4 days. So there is platforms created by various parties, like civil society. They conduct side events on highlighting issues. So that kind of activities are going on in parallel with this meeting. So focus on global economy, international development, and world's financial system. Every year it is in Washington. So the key focus is reducing poverty, increasing shared prosperity, and promoting sustainable development. I think while I go through the slides, what I want to mention is these terminologies. I think you need to, I will share this. I think the ISL will share this presentation. The terminology is very important. Now, you need to learn all this terminology, the appropriate word in the context. So I have I had a very bad experience with the last batch, where I had to correct some answer scripts, and I found that the outlook of engineers is very poor nowadays. I don't know. I can't explain how what has happened to our engineering fraternity here. So Paris Declaration, I want to touch upon more very key points on this, on the Paris Declaration. It's named from meeting that took place in Paris in 2005. We have 100, yeah. The most important thing is that agree to change the way we approach development and roadmap to improve quality of aid and impacts. Now we know we borrow money from World Bank, ADB, ICA, and how we spend is monitored by those three agencies. Now, if we no, I don't want to go into politics, but as you all know, if we borrow money from China, do they monitor in the same way as World Bank, ADB, and JICA? Just say yes or no. So that is the most important thing, that now to prepare a project by a multilateral development bank like World Bank, ADB, or JICA, they will take minimum 2 years. But in case of other bilateral, those who just give money, they don't care how we spend that money. And we that is why we are in trouble now. So we have spent that money without not on projects that are bringing economic returns. Key aspects of this conference: ownership. Developing countries set their own development strategies, improve their institutions, and tackle corruption. We are settled with corruption. That's why we are bankrupt now. And so we need to establish strategies to improve our institutions and tackle corruption. So alignment. Donor countries and organizations bring their support in line with these strategies and use local systems. So when the donors find out that we have proper policies, proper strategies, and we are also accountable to the donors, then there is no issue in raising loans for projects and also repaying the loans from the returns that we gain from projects. So harmonization, that means donor countries and organizations coordinate their actions, simplify procedures, and share information to avoid duplication. That they harmonize with country strategies, country policies, and they honor whatever we say, but it has to be within their framework of development. Development means accountability and also efficiency of utilizing resources. So managing for results, that is an important thing that as engineers we should know. Managing for results is the core function of an engineer. So we always spend a lot of money. I think engineers spend the largest amount of money in a budget. So they need to produce results. So developing countries and donors focus on producing and measuring results. We need to bring in smart indicators. That is, smart indicators. I don't need to mention those. I think you need to refer to smart indicators. Then mutual accountability. Donors and developing countries are accountable for development results. Now we, as well as donors, are accountable for development results. Now, those who represent the international community, they have to, at the end of the day, they have to show that they have invested in a viable project. Otherwise, their investment will be in questionable. So now the latest policy of the donors are that they will lend the money if we have a policy for each sector. Now, for example, energy sector, we have a policy that is, the policy is to make transparent decisions. So when there's a policy, everybody knows that the decisions are made in a transparent manner. So therefore, there is no risk of dealing with that sector or investing in that sector. So those are the key points that you need to understand and remember in this presentation. I don't want to go into these things, but Rio de Janeiro Earth Summit was one of that was a turning point of the thinking. I think the way we think has been changed on international communities' approach to development has been changed by Rio de Janeiro. That is, they decided what do you call Article 92, sorry, Article 21. That is how we approach 21st century. So there are United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, known as UN Climate Change. The Convention on Biological Diversity, the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. So 3 Rio Conventions are there, concerns over similar environmental and development issues, have sustainable development at their hearts. So Rio 92, we have adopted number of conventions, as I mentioned earlier. The same, the United Nations Conventions to Combat Desertification is UNCCD, was signed in 1994 based on recommendations of Article 21. Article 21 has some points, about 10 points or 14 points. How we shape the 21st century. That is, so most of the countries follow that Article 21. Yeah, 14 points there. I think, yeah, how we should face 21st century. I think you can go through these international cooperation to accelerate sustainable development in developing countries and related domestic policies. Combat poverty. Now, poverty is the number one issue affecting the planet, because poor people as well as rich people, they all trying to exploit the resources. But when by combating poverty, at least you can check poor people exploiting, and by international agreement, you can check and also change industries, how they operate, and stop exploitation of resources. Health, then promotion of sustainable human settlement, integrating environment and development, protection of atmosphere, management of land, combating climate change, combating desertification. Now, these are the 14 key points that are agreed by the international community to face 21st century, and also the changes that is required in terms of the way we do business are laid down in these 14 key points. Now, one of the, just to, as an eye opener, now you can see how the population has increased in the world. By 1950, we had only 2.5 billion. Now, after 1950, the development was accelerated because there was world peace and also lot of international, I think there was economic growth, global economic growth led to rapid development. Therefore, there was a explosion, population explosion in the 50s. That was called baby boom years. 1950s, we all know that even in Sri Lanka, the growth was 1.7 at that time, population growth. Most of the families had more than 5 children. So let us see what is sustainable development. The key guiding principle for long-term global development. The pillars are economic development, social development, and environment protection. Three pillars of sustainable development. You can see social. The common area is how much we can achieve sustainability. You can see from these three key key aspects of sustainable development. The contribution that they social stability, social security, environmental protection, economic development, all that will contribute to sustainable development. How many of you are familiar with 17 goals, sustainable development goals? Now, these are the 17 sustainable development goals. How it is categorized according to the areas of focus. Areas of focus. Now, goal 1 to 6 are rights based. What are those rights? End poverty, end hunger, ensure food security, health, well-being, education for all, achieve gender equality, water and sanitation. The water and sanitation are also two separate human rights declared by the UN in 2010. Then there are 7 to 12 goals. Those are related to economic development. Now these goals have, each and every goal has number of targets. By sustainable energy means phasing out fossil fuel, the use of fossil fuel for energy. Now, I'm giving you an example. Now, energy has to be, we need to think different out of the box and see what are the sources of energy that we can use without damaging the environment. So that is how the goal 7 is formulated. Then economic growth. Economic growth also need to contribute to restoring natural resource base and also environment. Now we should not exploit, but by economic growth we utilize resources, but at the same time we contribute to the resource base. Infrastructure industrialization. Inequalities also economic inequalities and also social various inequalities are there. They can affect the other goals as well. Cities, livable cities. Now, Colombo is on the threshold of air pollution. So, how livable in 10 years' time, we'll have to see. So that is how you develop a vision for these goals. What will happen in 5 years? What will happen in 10 years? That you should know as engineers. That is called foresight and anticipation, and also strategic plan. Sustainable consumption and production. Now we, Sri Lankans, we are famous for living beyond our means. I think a lot of our wealth is channeled to import unaffordable things. So that is why I say we were living beyond our means. So goals 13 to 17, that is to protect the health of the planet. Climate change, we need to combat climate change. Protect ocean, life and water. Then biodiversity, forestry, desertification, peace, justice, inclusiveness. Then to be effective on these goals and targets, we need strong institutions and partnerships with global community. Then there is a criteria that you have to apply for whatever you do. If you try to change the landscape of the earth for development, you need to apply these 6 sustainability criteria, which are very rigorous. You need a rigorous analysis of an intervention. If you intervene, you need to look for technical sustain, balance demand and supply, no exploitation. So I mentioned earlier that exploitation is the key word. Exploitation is the worst thing that we are confronted. Exploitation for economic gain has to be changed. Financial sustainability, stability of the population, stability of the demand, willingness to pay. Social sustainability, cost recovery or cost sharing, application of user pay and polluter pay concepts. Economic sustainability, sustaining economic development, water as an input to growth. Then institutional sustainability, capacity to plan, maintain and operate the system. Environmental sustainability, no long-term negative or irreversible effects on the resources that we use to develop economy or quality of life. I hope you understand. We intervene to improve quality of life as well as exploit the natural resource base. Now, for example, if you consider you are living in a highly polluted country, pollution is high. You get into a air-conditioned car and go to a air-conditioned office and do the work and come back home and switch on the air conditioner and you live. That is how you live. Is that the way? Is that sustainable? So that is the question that I want to ask. I have touched this. Then again, I want to go back to the Conference of Parties. Now that has been established in 28 years ago, and the International Committee has been meeting every year to take stocks of where we are going and where the states assess the progress made towards global goals set in the Paris Agreement and chartered a course of action in combating climate change, aid effectiveness, combating poverty, and health of the population as well as health of the planet. Now, this is how this Conference of Parties have been doing their business. Now, the most important thing that they COP28 held in United Arab Emirates in 2023. COP28, 27 was held in Glasgow, I think. So the most important agreement is end fossil fuel, end petrol. There is a now beginning of the end of use of fossil fuel has been taken as a big decision, and establishing a dedicated fund for loss and damage, maintaining clear intention to keep temperature 1.5 centigrade within reach. Now, how many of you think that the temperature has gone up in the last 10 years in Sri Lanka? Now, Colombo, I live in Colombo, but I was born in Delhi, and I know very well that we don't feel that cool climate in January now. We feel hot January and February. It means there is global warming and also local heat island effect. Because when there are a lot of concrete and buildings, there is a thing called heat island created, and temperature rises. I hope you can go through these things, and when there is a question, you can answer. Global issues currently affecting the planet. These are very important. Health of the planet, depletion of ozone layer, greenhouse gas emission, carbon dioxide level. Sustainability, depletion of resources, pollution, exploitation. So we cannot achieve sustainability if you allow depletion of resources, allow pollution, allow exploitation. Poverty. The issue is compounded by income distribution, lack of basic needs, rising cost of energy, food, and water. Now, rising cost of energy, we are experiencing that in Sri Lanka. Loss of livelihood during COVID, as well as economic downturn that I didn't mention in this lecture. The current economic downturn, we will be in a very bad shape in the next 7 years. Rising cost of energy, food, and water, loss of livelihood, access to education. Then water. Water, I think the challenges are enormous. Pollution, depletion, degradation of watershed, cost of treatment. Value of water is reducing, cost of water is rising. It's a continuous process. Then conflict, Russia-Ukraine war. War is going to contribute to poverty, resource depletion, then distribution of wealth, then pollution, destruction to life, pollution, poverty, disease. Nuclear threat by North Korea is also looming. Those are the global issues that I have laid down from my point of view. Absence of democracy, dictatorships, denying rights, corruption, suppression. Economy is affected due to COVID-19. I think we couldn't recover from the two disasters, that is COVID-19 and also economic downturn. Drugs and unethical trade and business. Here, the drugs means narcotics. Border issues, which are flaring up at times. Border issues means now in the Middle East, India, Pakistan, etc. So these are all upsetting the world peace. Without world peace, you cannot achieve sustainable development. These are the critical issues affecting environment of the planet. Industrial and domestic pollution, plastic, fossil fuel, built environment. Built environment means concrete jungles, asphalt and concrete. We lay asphalt and concrete, then we ruin the environment. Deforestation, exploitation of the resources. Climate impact, flood, drought, landslide, global warming, air, water, food pollution. Global warming as it is, temperature rise, loss of biodiversity, impact on marine environment, communicable diseases. Now we call HMD. I think all of you need to learn about this terminology because regardless of your discipline, you may be civil, electrical, electronics, telecommunication, IT, whatever specialty, your field of activity, you need to learn all these terminology because to be a smart communicator, you need to learn what is HMD, that is hydrometeorological disasters. Those are actually floods, droughts, landslides, then tsunamis, tornadoes, storms, cyclones, all those list. Endless list is there. Displacements, as a result of HMDs, displacements is possible, property damage is possible, poverty, loss of livelihood, destruction and loss of lives. Now I want to just give my thoughts on the current situation where we cannot think about some miracle to happen to Sri Lanka to regain our social status we enjoyed 20 or 30 years ago. This is the framework that I thought of presenting to you as something outside this lecture, but still it is food for thought. This is the framework that you need these 4 triangles for economy to be successful. The government has to provide social security. Then austerity means that you live within your means, within our means. Then we need to be accountable. Then the other thing is commitment and shared responsibility, that as citizens, we have our role to play in coming back to recover, restore, and prosper. These are the three words that you need to learn. What we have to do is recover, then restore. Recover means go back to roadmap to go back to where we were before 2019. Then restore the baseline. Then prosper means taking off from that baseline. So natural issues affecting Sri Lanka, of course, economic recovery, economic restoration, and prosperity. We need to think about prosperity at least after 5 years. Otherwise, we are not going to have a good life in Sri Lanka. These are the building blocks for enabling environment. These now I just applied this to water, but you can apply them now any other sector. You have to maintain the integrity of the hydrological cycle for sustainable water resources. At the same time, you have to maintain the integrity of the other economic sectors for sustainable development. So these are the key aspects of inviting assistance from global community. Sector policy, strategy, foresight, and anticipation. We should know what is going to happen in 5 years time, but in 10 years, what are we going to face? Then institutional arrangement, whether we have capacity. Then sector financing, how we supposed to finance, and also viable, raise the sector to viable entity. Planning, monitoring, and review reporting, especially monitoring whether we are doing well or not, and also corrective measures. And all those things need capacity development of especially engineers in respective agencies. Sri Lanka's future development challenges. Sri Lanka need to have a holistic policy on sustainable development. Inflation will further risk maintenance of service due to unaffordable cost. Rural sector people will face difficulties to pay for maintenance of water infrastructure and energy infrastructure because they can't afford day-to-day living, food especially. Food prices are high, then they can't pay for services. Strategies to optimize existing resources while protecting from exploitation. Poverty, increase vulnerability of the people. Current economic downturn and time taken to recover. Sri Lanka's debt surpassed GDP. Annual cost of energy is equivalent to half of the foreign exchange earnings. That is the critical thing that we are facing in our economy. Our cost of importing fuel is equivalent to half of the annual income of the country. For example, our average, we earn about $12 billion. $6 billion we spend on energy. So that is not sustainable. There is also we are confronted with current now technology and negative effects and positive effects. Now recently, these are for we are learning. UNESCO recommends a ban on cell phone in schools. Right? Phones are a distraction, enable bullying and hinder social development. Several countries have already banned phones in schools. Restriction of outdoor plays affect child development. Now, these are also global issues affecting the future generation. More prone to stress, anxiety, and depression, increased risk of mental health problems. Cognitive decline. When your younger generation spend a lot of time on screens, the cognitive development reduces. The use of artificial intelligence will affect cognitive development. Creative intelligence, there are 3 kinds of intelligence. When we were small, we always had some time on creative intelligence, analytical intelligence, practical intelligence. Over-reliance on AI will lead to lack of critical thinking and creativity. IT persons will use the brain and others will not use the brain. That is my statement. Others use the devices. So I think there are some slides I need to. Some slides are missing. All right, wait. Hope you are there. Yeah. Now, positive effects and negative effects I have mentioned. Right. What are the rights and what do they mean? I think everybody should know what are the rights and what do they mean. Now, for example, water, the UN declared water as a human right in 2010. So these are the, now we don't need to go through the things. The right to access to clean water has been considered as a human right. So this is how it goes. Also right to sanitation. Now go in the global community, at least 2.6 billion people are without proper sanitation. Nearly 2 billion people consume contaminated water. So in the sustainable development goal, there is a central transformative promise of the 2030 agenda. That is human rights based and leave no one behind. Give me a minute. Sorry, these are called universal values. Leave no one behind means that development should not leave any community behind so that they are not accounted for the services. That is, leave no one behind. That's a central proposal, transformative promise of the Sustainable Development Goals. And also gender equality and women empowerment. Now, we all know that some of the engineers in the 60s, our focus was on mega projects. And so most of the mega projects have left a lot of people behind. So that is why now we are confronted with those issues. So to achieve leave no one behind, we need to know what are these factors affecting the communities. Discrimination, unjust treatment, race, age, sex, or disability. Then geography, hard to reach areas, out of reach of the government delivery system. People may live in very hard to reach areas, so nobody will go there and look into their grievances. Governance, lack of interest and low priority. That is called apathy. Now we have low priority in providing services to people where they live on a very remote area. Socio-economic status, vulnerabilities and shocks due to climate change impacts and violence, conflict, displacements. So these are the 5 important aspects in achieving sustainable development, and also we should not leave anyone behind through that development. So as engineers, we must understand public involvement. Now this is the so-called orbit of public involvement. These are famous management specialists have created these things. Now, in the 60s, people were observers. They just observe what engineers did. Something like you go and construct a bridge, and people were just. When we moved to the site, people didn't know why we were going there with bulldozers and earth movers and things like that. So they were observers. Then they gradually became reviewers. Then with the time, by 70s, 80s, they became reviewers. And we accommodated their views, and they became advisors. And now we cannot avoid that they are decision makers. So according to their decision, we have to work, we have to act. We need to incorporate their views in development. So the big message, the final message that I had to give to engineers: whenever you embark on development projects, especially, you need to jointly diagnose the issue through mobilizing local knowledge, identifying real problem, bottlenecks, expectations versus outcomes, expectations of the beneficiaries. Jointly diagnose the issue, then jointly plan. Once you do jointly plan, you won't have obstructions or opposition from during the implementation. All inclusive approach. Then jointly implement, get community involved, then sense of ownership. No long-term irreversible side effects. That is one of the main important thing that you need to learn. No long-term irreversible side effects. It is not easy, but you need to analyze each and every project on these aspects. And also, these are my thoughts of current issues affecting development of engineers. Lack of supervisors with competencies. Seniors are not competent. When we were brought up as engineers, we were supervised by very competent engineers. Unfortunately, I have seen now, since I am an engineer, I can always criticize. Most of the agencies, they are confined. Seniors are also not competent to supervise. I hope you understand. You would have had, now as you are just entering as professionals, engineers. So you would have confronted these issues. So you have to be smarter than supervisors now, nowadays. Opportunities to engage as technical leaders. You don't get much opportunities to engage as technical leaders. You have to win that position. Then poor communication skills. Now, as I mentioned before, the answer scripts reflects very badly on communication skills. The lack of exposure to competent professional associates. Realization of the importance of continuous learning. Sticking to one agency. Poor report writing skills. Lack of opportunities for specialization and advanced learning. There is a statement saying called there are no prima donnas in engineering. That means there is no engineer who can dominate on the world stage, the stage. Say there is no actor in engineering, but it's a team. Competent team has to dominate. I hope this lecture enlightened you on global affairs and also Sri Lanka, what we are facing in the challenges in Sri Lanka, and also as engineers, what we have confronted with development in our career as well as country's development and also social, environmental, and economic development. So I hope you are happy with the presentation, and if you have questions, you can pose can ask now, or you can always send emails and discuss with me. There are questions now. I would like to. Mrs. Sanjeev, I hope you are there. Anybody there with questions, any doubts, any? I hope these are, a lot of things are new to you, but you need to be familiar with the, especially with the terminology. Can you raise some hands? Are there any? Anybody with the question? So you are, at least say something about the lecture. Are you clear? Are you getting a message? Hello.
Hi, sir. Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, it is very interesting, and I think we got a lot of knowledge about the international uh, affairs as well as the local affairs that we have to concern at this time. Really, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes. Now this is just an opening, but it is a very vast subject, and it is up to you to develop your own knowledge based on the topics that I have presented. These are the things that you need to be smart in your profession. So, any other comments? Mr. Gunadana, Mr. Vishwas Seranayaka made a comment, I think. What do you think about selecting your B paper? How do you propose to answer? Now, I have to set 2 questions on my lecture. Then, if you go through the lecture, and especially I need your language to check language skills, because writing is very important. Now, you may not be getting an opportunity to improve your writing if you are working in the field, but it's always try to now exchange emails with colleagues, emails with international bodies, and also try to submit papers. Your field experience can be turned into a very good case study. And those are the points that I want to make. Your technical solutions which you have contributed in the field can be a good case study for others to learn. So that is why sharing best practice is another important aspect of all our profession. Sharing best practice. We call best management practice. So shall I stop now, because are there any comments or responses, or positive or negative
One more
I
thing, sir.
would like to, huh?
One more thing,
Yes.
sir, that when
Yeah.
we are answering those questions,
Yes.
is it necessary to put all the current figures, actual figures? into the answer. That means that for an example, say that lack of drinking water, access for the lack of drinking water is it 2.5 billion or
Yeah,
maybe
no, I don't ask any figures, but if you put those things, it will add it will be a value addition to your essay.
Mhm.
Now this helps to, you can always study on your own. Are you a
Yes.
civil engineer or water engineer?
Civil engineers.
Civil engineer, where are you working?
And what about?
Water board, okay. If you are in the water board, you must know by now what is
Yeah.
going in the global arena with respect to water, even in, in Sri Lanka. So
Yes. Mhm.
actually, I am not going to be unfair with other participants who are in the other fields. So I don't want to focus on water, but international affairs, but you can add value to knowledge, to your knowledge.
Okay, sir.
Now,
Thank you.
even energy sector, they can focus on sustainable development. There is a goal called sustainable energy, and it has it's called affordable and clean energy. Now, clean energy means not polluting the atmosphere. So they can discuss if there is affordable and clean energy. Now, say solar energy. Once you invest in solar panels, it will be affordable in the long run. So, your Mr. Your name again, please.
Sam Vasanta Gunadana.
Asanta Gunadhan, okay. Asanta Gunadhan from Waterboard.
What? Yes, sir.
So you have done your design well.
I submitted and waiting for Viva, sir.
Yeah. Now you can always tell your seniors about my thoughts about the engineering.
Yes, sir.
Anyway, it would have been much better if we had a physical meeting so that interaction would have been interesting now.
Yes.
Unfortunately, it is so Zoom. But you can always contact me through emails and get more documents and supporting literature on these
Okay.
subjects. Then
Thank
shall
you.
we wind up then?
Thank you very much, sir.
Hope others are there. Mr. Kodikar, Vishwasena Nayaka.
Sir, excuse me, could you please mention your email if you want to clarify any doubts?
Shall I read it out?
Yes.
Ananda HJ. Now my name is there in the screen, anandahj@gmail.com.
I think Mr. Sanjeeva will be able to share it with us now.
Yeah, yeah. In the notes I can put. Okay, it is anandahj@gmail.com. It's easy to remember. Shall we
Thank you, sir.
then say bye to everybody?
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank
Yes.
you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank
listening.
you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. All the best for your B paper.
Thank you, sir.